Well, the president says the war on poverty is far from over, yet the more he's pushed for entitlements like food stamps, the more the dependency on them seems to grow. So are these benefits really helping or just creating an entitlement nation, as some had suggested? Let's bring in our panel to dive into this morning. President of Penn Financial, Matt McCall, is here. Democratic strategist Brian Benjamin, and from Concerned Women for America, Allison Howard. Nice to see you both, all of you this morning. Welcome to the show.
Morning.
The president's policy is a pivot. Brian, moving from what many have called a big, the president himself has acknowledged Obamacare debacle and trying to turn the conversation to income inequality in 2014. How does the president do that? And is it a distraction from the other things that have gone into place so far?
Well, I think just on the Obamacare point, I mean, we've had over 1 million people sign up in December, so to call it a debacle is probably a bit of a stretch.
You disagree, though, the rollout was a debacle?
Yeah, it was a mess, as was the rollout of Medicare Part D under Bush. So it's, there's always rollout issues, but I think things are moving forward. But in regards to the poverty point, I think it's important to keep in mind that when you talk about entitlements, I hope you also talking about Social Security, Medicare, these are entitlements that people really care about. And given the sort of income inequality in this country, we've got to really focus on how to provide people with skills and how to provide targeted resources to aid the poor to move forward. And so
more government programs, is that the answer, or less government?
Well, I think the issue here is not earned entitlements like Social Security that you pay into. We're talking about the effectiveness of unearned entitlements. And the millennial generation is very giving, willing to put money in, but we've put $20 trillion into the war on poverty. We have no sentimental attachment to it because we weren't around when those decisions were made. All we can see is the results, and we still have a 15% poverty rate in this country. And I think Washington needs to take a look at all the programs that are anti-poverty and ask two questions. Do they promote upward mobility, or do they promote long-term dependency? And
well, isn't that what we're seeing, though, with some millennials, Matt, is this sort of long-term dependency? We hear stories of kids just saying, you know what, I don't need to work. I'm just going to go and find myself. Yeah. I'm going to wander the mountains and play guitar and kind of, you know what, I'm living off the government for a while. It's a dependency issue, too, isn't it?
It is, because the millennials grew up on that. They're accustomed to this entitlement. When you have your insurance on your parents up to 26 years old now. I didn't have that when I was growing up. You got to get a job and get your own insurance. So I think they are a bit entitled, but how do we change this? Maybe motivate them by taking away the entitlements. I think that's a good move. But getting them a job, because our poverty rate is 15%. But if you have one working person in a household, your poverty rate drops to 4.6%. So the president, instead of handing out and letting the poor stay poor and keeping them poor, let's get them a job. Because if you get them a job, they suddenly move out of poverty.
Right. Is this a reversal of what we saw with President Clinton and Republicans, obviously taking a card out of the Republicans' playbook and the welfare to work, and actually not giving people a handout, but a helping hand? And there was a lot of agreement on that. And President Clinton actually angry, it seemed, back at some of the reversals under the Obama administration.
Well, I mean, if you look at the promise zones, which is what we're talking about, which the president just announced, right, it's not about new entitlements and new programs at all. It's about being more efficient with what we have presently and helping 5 cities, one is Philadelphia, and southeastern Kentucky, helping them to sort of focus on what are the key issues that we need to address temporarily to help get people out of poverty. I don't believe any Democrat or Republican wants people to be on long-term dependency, but we don't want people to be in a situation where they can't afford to pay their rent or pay their mortgages because of an economy that's been
tough. The problem is he keeps handing out more entitlements. I mean,
what's the more entitlements you're talking about?
Well, let's take
the promise zones.
This up on the screen.
That's not new.
Let's take a look at this. Under President Obama, here's some stats: 22% increase in disability, 48% increase in food stamps, 17 weeks increase in the duration of unemployment benefits.
That's because people are working. That's because people aren't working. People losing jobs.
Exactly.
Right. So why aren't we talking about things that we know really affect poverty?
Like what?
Like stable families, like job creation through job training skills. Guess what? The government has a problem making jobs because they can't make jobs. This starts at a local level, and there's true social and economic conservatives like Marco Rubio, Penny Nance, who are looking to say, I want to combat poverty with what really works. And I think we've all said it's not working right now.
Do you disagree that government can create jobs?
Government can help the private sector create jobs through the right incentives and structures, right? So when you look at sort of affordable housing, that's a public-private partnership. But my point is this: the president had a plan, a Jobs Act plan that the Republicans refused to vote on, refused to work with him on. And I do agree that in some cases the Republicans do have reasonable ideas around how to create jobs, but when they refuse to engage with the president or refuse to come up with their own bills, fortunately Rand Paul and some others are starting to have that conversation. But before now, they never even thought about it.
All the president is take a step back. take away the over-regulations, make the tax code a bit easier. I'm an entrepreneur. I own several businesses. If you can actually make it easier for somebody to start a business, out of every recession, how have we come out of that? Entrepreneurship, innovation. We can't do that right now. Too many regulations.
Too much government. Too much
regulation. You can go to New Zealand and start a business the exact same day that you decide that you want to start that business and get up and running. In this country,
a cycle of poverty.
But you've got to train people. You've got to give skills training to those who don't have the skills, and that's something that's not from our conversation.
Breaks the cycle of poverty.
Brian, Matt, Allison, great to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Coming up.